Hello, and welcome back to the JRB podcast with myself, Ryan Levine, joined here with Jeff Jones and Bohdan Temnick.
Hello.
Yeah, how you going?
So today we're going to touch a little bit on YCS Sydney that Bohdan played 2 weeks ago at this point. 1 week, I don't even remember anymore. It doesn't matter. 1 or 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
whenever it was, and we just got the OCG April 1st list, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then I'm sure that will devolve into some other unplanned third topic. We are positive.
Yes.
So, I guess first, let's just, thoughts on YCS Sydney, your first in person YCS in a little while, because you didn't come to the 3v3 events this year. So, how was
Yeah.
that like getting back
Uh,
into it?
the preparation for the event, I felt we were reasonably prepared. Obviously, the one thing that I think we sort of neglected was maybe playing out a lot of the games that we should have. Like I did not get to resolve the Zelantis OTK in testing at all because a lot of the time we were doing like the standard test hands like open-handed this and that. Like I didn't get reps in a field that was realistic. So I do contribute maybe some of the gameplay related issues to myself. However, I can tell you all of my losses quite quickly. Um, I played a giant card on the Friday, which again was limited to only 32 spots and was run via online submission. So, first in, best dressed sort of vibe, especially for a Friday event. Everyone really enjoys those. So I managed to get a ticket in. I win against Cash. I win against Snake Eye. I win against Snake Eye. And then in the finals, I play against Cash Tira. I proceed to just get shifted game one and lose. And then game two, I side out 2 copies of Effect Vela. I'm playing the Fire King version at this point, mind you, flip flopping between either or lists. I side out 2 copies of Vela because my opponent's playing DeFi and Shifter, and I figure it has diminishing returns like the later the game runs, but I need at least 1 copy for Crossout Designated when I'm going first. My opening hand is Ash, Crossout, Vela. I normal summon Ash. My opponent Velas it. I look at my hand. I think for a second. I go, yep, and then I proceed to pass my turn and then die. So I come second. I do not get the medium giant card. That's probably a topic that we can discuss 10 years from now in my tell-all book, because I probably shouldn't bring it up now. And then the next day, I switched to pure Snake Eye, and I thought my deck was quite well built for the field, which we found to be, just riddled with rogue decks. I think the pocket has turned into a 50% anti Snake Eye and then a 50% Snake Eye, with the anti Snake Eye decks just not really even encompassing like Voiceless Voice. I'm talking like pure raw hatred. Like I think Voiceless, Branded, and some of the other decks that are actually just very viable currently don't fit into this. So maybe it's like more a 45-45 with a 10% of like Voiceless and Branded. But obviously those numbers just mean nothing. It's just me spewing. Um, so I had a 45 card list, a bunch of hand traps, and I was really trying to accommodate for the mirror match game one because I thought all the strongest players in the tournament were playing Snake Eye. So if I made it to top cut and I'm versing, Kamal, Chris, Hani, all these people that have played multiple events and even won events in the last month or so, I would rather have my deck be accommodating for them more than anything. My sideboard was quite garnered to like towards Rogue, so I had Solemn Strike instead of Summon Limit because I thought there'd be more Rogue matchups where I'd rather lean into a card like Strike going first that has higher value than a card like Summon Limit. We also opted to use Fenrir, which you saw a lot of other people do for Sydney as well. And Fenrir as well just is another card that has applications against the rogue decks. But then in the hand trap wars, it's another card that functions when you are being stopped. So Fenrir plus normal summon Snake Eye Ash is like quite difficult for the opponent when the game gets sort of simplified when we're throwing hand traps at each other. Not to mention, like, you do have the option to just make a Baron with like a cold Fenrir. Even just like lullaby your opponents for that. Enough about Fenrir. That card's insane. It's good. It's crazy. And then I had my back row removal standard stuff. Round one, I verse. I'll just go over my losses, mind you. So round one, I verse Branded. I lose the roll game one. My opponent plays normally. I think I have maybe like one or two hand traps. And they're not like, it's not like Ash resolve beat Branded Fusion. My opponent passes and like I win. It was just like my opponent plays all of his cards sequenced correctly, and my two hand traps literally mean nothing. And then when I try to play, like there's some crackback, there's some back and forth. However, like at the end of the day, he has more gas than I do. My cards aren't replenishing themselves. Like Mirror Jade is quite good, and I think Branded is, you know, a reasonably good matchup when it does get to play against Snake Eye, especially going first. And then going second, I do the standard combo. I get Nibiru'd, but I still end on Formula. It was Formula IP in the Spell and Trap, Baron, and Temple. I have Impalm set, Droll and Nibiru in hand, Princess and Grave. So full setup, and my opponent's Nibiru'd me. They go first action Shadow Fusion, and I literally lose on the spot when they dump Aerial, and I can't win. So from like that was I think that's the brunt of it. But then obviously the compounding effect turns into like, okay, then my opponent has triple tactics, talents, and thrust, and fusion deployment. All going second. Could not have been more perfect hand. He played them all in the correct order, and I just got destroyed. But Shadow Fusion first action in that spot specifically was by far the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I could not, you know, do anything. My three cards in grave got banished. I lose a point of interaction. And also he dumped Shadow Dragon, which forces out, you know, X, Y, and Z interaction here. So yeah, it just all sort of went downhill for round one, so that was unfortunate. I win a couple rounds. I play against a mirror match. So we opted for Droll in the main because of like how, you know, the metagame sort of devolved post 3v3s, figuring there'd be more rogue decks, more voiceless, stuff like that. And you know, it was correct that, you know, those, well, Droll's not that good against voices, but you know what I mean. It's just like there's more decks where Droll is probably accommodated versus like the players who have been playing a bunch and know all the combos to beat Droll. I figured there's also a good chunk of weaker players that we could have Droll against and pair a hand trap and they won't know what to do. So I draw my opponent. They play a little bit, make their end board, and then they tactics me. They rip the only playable card out of my hand, which was just like a Snake Eye Ash, and then the other cards is like Oak something, whatever. I draw, I start playing, I get some playback. He makes some missteps, whatever. And then it gets to this really interesting / weird game state where I use my temple to summon his flame budge, which in my head I'm like, oh, this is a crazy misstep. Like he's already used like tactics, and I'm just sitting here. I'm like, okay, I wonder like if he plays multiple tactics, like I guess like I can't really put him on it, whatever. And this is the only like, you know, win condition I have. It's like temple summon his flame budge, and then his flame budge rips another card out of the spell and trap. So like I'm feeling pretty good. He has one card in hand, no other interaction. Last card activates tactics, takes the flame budge. Actually, no, it was Chainlink 1 Temple to summon his Flame Budge, Chainlink 2 my Nibiru. And that's how the game state really just like devolved. And then last card tactics take Flame Budge, whatever. And then I just die. And then game 2, my opening hand is Oak, Ash, actually it was like Oak, Diabell, Hand Trap, and then maybe some other like redundancy cards, like maybe Second Witch or something. And then it was like a Nibiru as well. So I like play, I get delted on original, I pass. My opponent manages to summon access code with 53 and a floating flame budge without using the flame budge effect to summon two bodies. So he goes to enter battle phase, I Nibiru. My opponent goes, okay, proceeds to summon the two back, and basically does the Zelantis Raging Phoenix play through the Nibiru to kill me anyway. So again, he played that how you're meant to play it, but there was no playback whatsoever because he played it correctly. And the one Nibiru literally meant nothing. So I guess people were right. Maybe Nibiru was just unplayable. I win a couple more rounds. I'm in X2 playing like round 8 or round 9. So like last round of day 1, and I queue into Sprite. Funny, right? I'm like, oh, cool, Sprite. So he wins the die roll. First action shift is me, sure. His deck doesn't do quite a lot. So I have a little bit of playback game 1. Obviously turns into nothing because Shifter basically made a bunch of my cards in hand unplayable. Game 2, first action, me going first. I get shifted again. Can't do anything. He does something pretty lackluster. I have some playback. There's an SP made banishing the Shifter in his own grave. So he made an SP, banished Shifter, shifted me again. That's some more playback. I end up winning that game. Don't know how. Game 3, they go first. First action Shifter again. and then they make full Sprite combo with Herald and everything else. I break that board with Typhon. My opponent makes the board again. It's like Sprint, like Gigantic, like a negate something. And I'm looking at my hand. I'm not under Shifter anymore. And like I have literally no win condition, and I'll probably get killed on the crackback. But I try to play, my Witch gets bounced, and I cannot stick a body on board to use Subversion with, and Carrot is just floating. So I lose that one. Maybe could have dragged it out a little longer, but nope, there was no issue. So I got shifted 4 times in one match, and I lost, but I won the game where I got shifted twice. Who would have thought? Yeah, and that was my experience for that. I played an Edison event on Sunday. I didn't play the Edison deck that I would like to have played. And another tangent that we can go on and probably talk about for hours is how old format Yu-Gi-Oh has become less fun to me in the sense of, little bro, the event was in 2010. We are not, playing the skillful format that you once knew. You were just making your deck as upgraded as possible to modern Yu-Gi-Oh. So we went from the trend of, yeah, this format was fun because everyone played a fair deck. So if you played an unfair deck, your win rate was high. But what we should look at for the old formats is, the card pool was very, very like vast, but then the gameplay was sort of like shallow, if that makes sense. Like we're just sitting there trading back and forth. If you play Jeff's deck versus Jeff's deck, I think it can be, like skillful relative to what your skill level is. But when you start introducing like the deep draw dragon decks and like the miracle fusion decks, I think they do tend to
And Deck
skew
Devi.
more towards modern Yu-Gi-Oh.
I hate Deck
Less
Devi so
of
much in
old
that
Yu-Gi-Oh.
format. Oh
Yeah.
god, Deck Devi makes me so sad.
No, yeah, that's also that. Well, like I mean, yeah, that, and you made that anti-spell tweet God knows how long ago.
Yeah.
And that was a similar sort of thing, right? It's like I got anti-spelled then, I got anti-spelled now, and it was not fun. I got deck debuted then, I got deck debuted, 2022 with my Sprite deck. So yeah, so I didn't do well in the Edison event either. I like lost some I had to play a Blackwing deck, like literal just mono Blackwing, and I'm sitting here looking at these cards in my hand. I'm like, holy shit, how would anyone play this in any format? Like, this deck is probably insane when people are playing fair Yu-Gi-Oh! But when they're playing unfair Yu-Gi-Oh!, I'm just looking at normal summons in my hand that if I summon, they will either get bottomless, if I attack, they will get deprisoned. But if I leave them on the board, they get contested so easily. So this deck felt literally like it almost felt like Flunderies almost. Like that's a good parallel. If you haven't played like old format Yu-Gi-Oh! Or like a deck like Blackwing or something, you have to draw like a normal summon, a whirlwind, and then like 4 non-engine, which is just like traps. And they have to be, traps that also contest heavy storm. You need you can't just draw all Blackwing cards and hope for the best. Like sometimes you'll summon 5 guys and attack for game going second, but that's a pipe dream. So yeah, that was really just my YCS experience. I did not have as much fun as I would have liked. Like I had fun because of the people. The Yu-Gi-Oh itself was not fun. And that's really it. And then I guess we can look at the event itself. We had, all of the usual suspects in Top Cut that traveled over. The deck representation was what you pretty much think it would be. We had, the rogue stragglers like Salamangreat, and we had a fish deck, like the Stealth Kraken deck, top as well. And those ones just sort of make a little bit of sense given like how Sydney sort of plays out. Like it's not super duper casual, but I do think those decks can and will beat Snake Eye, especially the less experienced Snake Eye players as well. So like that's why they sort of just sneak into Top Cut. And obviously they get the chopping block in like top 32 usually. The one thing to note that I think was kind of interesting, if you are playing current format without any bells and whistles, I don't even know what big event comes up with sets changing, but there was a voiceless deck that came first after Swiss, and it was doing Dragoon with the branded fusion stuff, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It's not something we saw. Like we saw branded fusion, but we didn't see people doing Dragoon, and I thought that was like cool as like another layer. And if voiceless picks up, obviously cards like Dark Rule will probably get a lot of value as well. So that was kind of neat. I guess that was like maybe like the main bit of tech that came out of Sydney that I have seen a lot of people adopting now, which I thought was cool. I always like when Australians, bring some innovation, and that guy definitely did quite well. Like very unexpected, just crushed Swiss. And then we get to top 4. We have 3 Americans and 1 Australian, and we've been here before. 2019, you had myself, Jesse, and Peter Mitro, each one of us having one. Jesse, I think at the time had no, we all had 1 YCS win, and the third player, obviously a strong player. He's in top 4. Does not have a YCS win. Lo and behold, the person without the YCS win wins the event. This event, the person without the YCS win wins the event. In Christian Arena, Chris LeBlanc, and Kamal top 4 with the random Melbourne guy, who's not a random, mind you, but he just beat the 2 people, wins in the finals, and he even said, he's like, Kamal plays a card, gets hand trap, passes back to me, I have combo plus cross out, and I kill him. And he's just like, it's a sad way to win a finals, but I'm glad I won. I'm like, yeah, dude, like, you know it. Like, when the winner says that, the format has some issues to it. But that was my Sydney experience. I hope you all enjoyed it, and you can feel my pain.
You can leave your angry comments about us not liking Edison.
Jeff
won the YC. Jeff won SGC Edison, so
old formats, though. Like,
he gets immunity.
The only format that seems to have like people that don't do the ignorant stuff, I think, is GOAT. Like, if you look at the GOAT format list traditionally, I think GOAT has way more non-interactive decks in the grand scheme of things. Like, the amount of FTKs that have such high win percentages, but GOAT seems to be not inbred enough, but like the pocketed hive mind of the community seems to gravitate more towards like the control, right? You'll look at these chaos decks and think, damn, there's so many more ignorant things you can do. I guess maybe the only other deck that could be comparable to like the Dragon deck of Edison is maybe like Reasoning Gate for GOAT format. But otherwise, I still see people play these really fair decks with cards that I think are unplayable. So that's old format in general, no bueno. Like, when Plant makes the resurgence, I can't wait. You're going to get FTK'd by Fabled. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
But. Yeah, this is like, I don't want to spend too much on this, but I will say, I feel like any time, if we were to go back and play any old format, it is fun when you play card for card the lists that were played at the time, probably. Because either you played back then, so you've already played these deck lists card for card, and it's like, oh, this is like, a nostalgic trip. Or because at the time we didn't have enough time to hyper optimize everything. I guarantee you, if you go back to these like more diverse formats like 2015 or 2016, and you'll be like, wow, 2015 there were like 7 different decks, and then you look back and it's like, I feel like if you weren't playing BA or Necroz, you actually couldn't, like, those other decks are so much weaker that if we like really optimized BA and optimized Necroz, the other like 5 decks that anybody entered with would just be completely unviable. And similarly, I think if we go back to like 2016, where we had like 5 or 6 decks or whatever, again, I think if you hyper optimize BA and hyper optimize Monarch, I do not think any of the other decks are worth looking at.
Jesse and I actually discussed this, like, for that YCS Toronto, we're just like, imagine if one of us just decided to pull the trigger on like Snow. Like, how stupid it would have been. Like, that card was just legal. We were able to make multiple Beatrice and multiple Dante turn 1. Like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Even the Pendulum deck as well was very like unoptimized, and as we saw, like, moving forward, like, Pendulum just became the insane deck before like all of this support too. We could have just had everything be silly. But yeah, like, that's the other one. My favorite quote is it's one of these tweets where it's like, yeah, I taking a bite of this like Doritos, like Locos, whatever flavor, and there's enough like spice on here to kill like a medieval peasant. That's what I feel when you put like a modern Edison player versus someone who played at the actual Edison event with their fair deck, right? Like, there is enough combo and flavor here to kill this small 2010 peasant. It's very, very funny. It's very funny to think about.
Yes, I guess that's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think there is, merit, and it's fun to go back and play older formats. I do not think it is as fun when you start hyper optimizing them to the level we've gotten. Then it just becomes like, I don't know. It kind of kills the novelty of playing an old format for me, I guess. You're right, but enough about the old format. We have the futures format. We got the April 1st OCG ban list, and it's now cutting it closer if I feel like we're going to get a TCG ban list before the next set of events, because I don't remember the exact timeline, but I mentioned it last episode where we're in this pocket of no events in any territory, to my knowledge, any TCG territory, for like 3 or 4 weeks. But then as soon as like the first one starts, we have like 4 events in 5 weeks or something. And then there's really
as soon
no
as we hit
break.
April, I think Europe and oceanic territories, as well as like Latin America, will start having their nationals and state championships,
Yeah.
which is like the first foray into the competitive season, especially for Europe, who from the looks of it will not have a YCS this season. So something to consider. So maybe these national events will put a lot more stake in terms of like building the metagame compared to where they were at, previous years. But
yeah, like I'm pretty sure once, like I don't think there's a week off from, I guess I'll just pull it up real quick. Let's see, starting with YCS Colombia next week, there's 1 week off, and then there's Guadalajara, Mexico. Then the week after that is Raleigh. Then there's 1 week off. Then YCS Rio in Brazil. So yeah, so there's 4 events in 6 weeks, and then we have a month off in North America for basically the whole month of May is kind of blank in North America, and then there's YCS Indy in June. So if we don't get one literally this week, I truly feel like we're not getting one until May. So I guess real quick before we jump into this, is that too, like, do you think we've had these cards, and do we think we've had enough events and we've had this format long enough to justify a list? Or do you think we let all the April events play out, and then if Snake Eyes, if somehow Snake Eyes is still the definitive, only it will be, then do you just line it up and execute it via firing squad? Like, is Snake Eye Ash just taken out back, right? Like, what are we doing?
I would like to see another non 3v3 YCS. I think Sydney gave us a good enough idea of what an actual like in person. Well, okay, so when you look at the regional results and then compare it to Sydney, it lined up quite well. It's like quite standard. It's exactly what you'd expect after like all the distribution and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a North American or European YCS, with the same field that you would have normally, would probably give us a good enough idea of where we're at. And I think you'll probably end up seeing Snake Eyes still take it. But what, like, the issue would be, Konami will see another event where you probably still have like 50% Snake Eye and Top Cut, but you're still getting like, maybe 10 other decks into the Top Cut. Like, maybe that's generous, but they'll still look at it as like, there's enough diversity here. This is okay. It's the parallels with the memes. The dog is sitting in the house on fire. This is fine.
Uh-huh.
Like the fire is the Snake Eye deck taking up 50% of the field and 50% of Top Cut and still winning the event. But then the other one is like, you can still play, the deck that you like to play. You just have to, build to beat Snake Eye. So maybe that's a point of concern.
Well, I think building to beat Snake Eye is just putting 15 hand traps in your deck.
Yeah,
and
no,
hoping you draw
for
multiple
sure.
of them.
Well, like it's that, or you like up a die roll and play like a bunch of floodgates like game 1, right? Like,
Which is not fun for anybody. I don't think.
No, for sure. But like
no.
in Konami's eyes, like if they have multiple events where it's like, yeah, like this deck is the best deck, but you can still play other decks and do whatever they consider like doing well to be. So like that's more to the point of, if we have a list now, do I think enough has been done? Like, will another event show us something different? Probably not. But more to the point of, like, why have a list now if we don't have that much information to go on that is like individual events, and then if we have an event now and it shows a similar distribution again of the 50% Snake Eye and then the rest spread, like, do you think like another event will show Konami anything they don't already know? Is like the real takeaway here.
Well, I'd also like to point out that it's more than that. There have been a shit ton of regionals, and Konami also gets the deck list from the regionals, so they also get to see what else is being played out there in a pretty big, like, they get a pretty big
Have
pool.
you seen those regional like spreadsheets with like the deck breakdowns? They
Is there a recent one?
Yeah, I'd have to dig for it. Right, actually, it could take me 2 seconds. I could probably find it. My understanding is that The breakdown is exactly what you expect it to be. However, the amount of rogue decks that are doing well is just very, 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 very funny.
All right. While you're looking for that, I'm gonna say one
Okay,
other thing about this.
So
Oh,
I
find
found it. I found it.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right. Sounds like you didn't find it.
No, I
Okay.
hold up. No, because there was like a screenshot and then there's like the actual sheet. But let me open this and then I have to share it with you. Give me 2 seconds.
Overdone.
How do I do this?
All right. So while you're doing that,
Okay.
the
All right. So
thing about
let me-
the timing of a list is like technically last year we did have a really like when it happened, everybody was shocked this is how it happened, which was like they announced a ban list and it went into effect the Monday after YCS Mexico City and then was in effect for YCS Vegas the next week. It was like such a weird timing to be like a new set comes out, the ban list is revealed before the set is legal, but goes into effect the week after the set. So like technically they could do something similar where in one of these off weeks we just get a bit like April 15th we could just have a ban list go into effect. Like that is possible. I just feel like it's unlikely. So I'm not gonna say that if we don't get one this week, it is impossible to get one before May. I just feel like if we do not get one before the end of March, it is very unlikely we'll get one before May. All right, so we got this spread. Is this the regional spreadsheet? Okay. Overview. Great.
Post Photon Hypernova format.
Is this all top 8s or is this
yeah, this is all top 8s.
Okay.
I think I so it should have YCS Sydney included as well as the 3v3s, but I could be wrong. This could only be regionals and I could be incorrect, but I think he does differentiate between regional and YCS for sure. But if you just want to have a look and like look at that pie chart,
yeah,
for those
Fire
people
King
that
and Snake Eyes is like
I guess Ryan can throw it in the comment section. This guy, the Ivan Campos guy, does a great job, collating all the information and putting it in spreadsheet form. It's very helpful. Yeah, like you can see like the pie chart, man. Like yes, 40%, but when have you seen this many other just random decks? And like these are all decks.
So also, I want to point
powerful.
out that this says basically 40% fighter decks, but there is 19% unknown, which could still be fighter decks. It just means they don't know what the decks were.
Oh no, I won't like dispute that. I agree. That could also just throw it further, but like
no, so I was not saying it's at least 40%, but it could be more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for people.
So we could let's say hypothetically, right? Hypothetically, we hit what? So we're at 38.6 into that. So like the highest we can hit is like 60% spread, where all 19% of the unknowns are like Snake Eye decks, right? So we hit a 60-40 of the best deck, which is like to be expected. But I think like the fact that you still see like that many unique individual decks like still making like top 8. Obviously they're regionals, they don't matter as much, but in the grand scheme of things, like when you're looking at a pie chart like this, if you were Konami, you'd be like, all right, like we're doing pretty good. And the problem is going to be like you are not. Like you need to do something else.
Also, so if we don't count the unknown, let's say we just completely get rid of the unknown. We don't know, we can't talk about it. When you look at these other decks like Voiceless, I'm not sure how much of these are using it, but something I think that is funny is that when you look at the next 1, 2, 4 most played decks outside of this unknown category, you have Voiceless and Branded, which both can use the Branded combo to lock your opponent out of playing the game. Voiceless gets to use Jowgen, and the Branded deck just gets to use Gimmick Puppet.
Yeah.
And the other 2 decks you can play, which looks to be
Flu and Catched Hero,
which are decks that just are Shifter, which are reactivate Shifter, and so there's a common theme among these other decks that can do well.
For sure.
That it's activate 1 card and no deck is playing, no matter what you're doing, basically. So
just before we get too deep into this, because again, this will turn into like what we want to happen. Do we want to just go over the OCG list? Because I feel like that one we could probably get through quite quickly. We
Yeah.
can really just break down. Hey, like this is pretty bad from a big company.
Yeah.
Like we have seen ban lists for other games in other things, and like they will have like patch notes essentially, right? And they'll break down why X, Y, and Z is happening. If Konami did that for these, like they had done prior, like those, not counting the one on the blog from forever ago
Yeah,
that
that doesn't
everyone
count.
lost their mind over. There was
Yeah.
definitely an OCG one where they explained why a certain card has been hit, and we laughed at that too. But
And then
guess
I
we can
laugh
go
at the
over
Duel
this,
Links one
yeah.
every time. The Duel Links like patch
Oh,
notes
Duel
are
Links one.
literally just this deck's win
This
rate was
card
too
was played a
high,
lot.
so
Yeah,
we limited
right.
it. And I'm like, yeah, and like what? Like what?
Yeah.
Like correct?
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
I
okay,
guess.
at the
I
end
mean,
of the
isn't that
day,
the reason
isn't
for
that
all
what
of them?
should be happening most of the time?
Yeah, no,
anyway?
I know, but I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is, what kind of like if they release the patch notes for this and it's like limited, wanted, Secret of Sinful Spoils, this card was played too much. Like, yeah, like I don't need them to explain most
yes.
of the
I
most
know
the
why this card
changes.
is good.
Yeah, yeah. What I want to know, the only thing I want to know is the reasonings for how many copies they're adjusted to,
Yes.
which we'll get to in a
Yes.
second. We're gonna get to that.
Yeah. I agree with that. This will be a
Because
fun
it's
one.
kind of all right. So quick little
Let's
overview.
start.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up here. Newly forbidden, none. This is the first OCG list in 30 lists that did not ban a card. The last OCG list that did not add a new card to forbidden was July 2017. And
So
that was
I
a list that
would
did
like
not
to,
adjust any cards lower. That list unlimited a couple of cards. Nothing was added to the limited section, and nothing was added to the forbidden section in that list. So I'm not even sure I count that one as like a real list, really.
I agree with that. I would like to bring something up real quick.
Mhm.
And we can. I don't want to go on like a super duper tangent with this, and like we can discuss this if need be. I genuinely believe that you might see more OCG lists not banning cards moving forward. The reason being, because they are currently doing Asian English Part 2, and they're doing a simplified Chinese in China now. And those have to play catch up. And I think that they want to limit the amount of cards that they are banning moving forward. Obviously, like within reason. Like if something's too much of a problem, I could see it just being banned instantly. But the reason for some of these hits may or may not be because their OCG formats for Asian English and simplified Chinese are playing catch up, right? And that could be a factor of like, if we ban this card, we basically just ruined half of our product.
Yeah,
by
like we can't ban
forward.
wanted
But they could
before it
use that
even
to their
comes out.
advantage.
Yeah,
They could use that to their advantage as well, whereby they hit problems early and just don't print them in those languages at all.
Yeah.
Like that could also be a possibility. But in my head, I think that is definitely a factor for them when it comes to some of these hits and limits, because now they do have two regions that are playing catch up. Asian English, not so much in terms of relevancy, as they're still able to use, Japanese cards. But I think for simplified Chinese itself could definitely be a possibility moving forward because it's such a big market for them. Anyway, yeah, let's get into the
So newly
Yep.
limited title Dragon Ruler of Torrents from forbidden to limited. I don't think like we've seen the Dragon Rulers been slowly getting unbanned here and there in Master Duel. They're all at 3, I think, like all of them, right?
Yeah, I think
So-
you can play Dragon, like pure Dragon Ruler in Master Duel, and it is unplayable. So,
Yeah, so
Is
like
title at 3 in Master Duel?
yes, I believe all of them are, right?
I
guess
thought
I'll
it was
check real
just the
quick.
other ones, but I'm not
I
entirely
don't
sure.
remember. Yeah, like it's
The-
something like a bunch of you can play the babies and you can play a bunch of the big ones, but it doesn't do anything. It's whatever. I think
pretty
Redox is
sure-
probably the more egregious one in the grand scheme of things now. But
Yeah, I'm pretty
So
sure
I-
title
I-
is title's just not. Yeah, it's just at 3 in Master Duel. It looks
Okay,
like.
yeah. I think title is like the scariest of them because the ability to send any card from your deck to the graveyard is notoriously powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if we get a after fighter format, if we get like a water format, this card could be scary if it's like multiples. But
so I to touch on that one real quick, I think that the people who are hoping for a water format after the fire format, it's just funny. And if Konami gives us like broken water cards next, I will probably lose all hope because just there's no need. But that's probably something else. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
one's more of like a trope than anything. Haha, fire format. What's that? Let's hit all the fire cards. All right, you can play water format. It's like, all right, man. Like, cool. Whatever. All right.
Wasn't there
one.
a crazy link that just got revealed that for like a wind deck, or did I make that up? Was that just a dream I had? Wasn't there some
Yes,
crazy?
you had
I
a
don't remember.
fever dream.
We'll figure it out. I'm
Ryan gone off a bang.
history.
Wakes up
Yeah,
at 3 a.m.
history.
sweating.
History will vindicate me on that one.
Oh my god, Smorg's back. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Limited Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils from Unlimited to Limited. I think Jeff and I have a lot to say about this. Yeah, I'm surprised as well. But who wants to start on this one? This is probably the most we probably have to say.
I'm gonna give my thoughts really quick because I just think this is like probably the most stupid hit I have ever seen.
Okay, well, spoiler alerts, SP Little A's limited to 2, and that's pretty fucking stupid, so...
Oh, no, but like, spoilers, man. You guys can go over, like, the brunt of it, but I, like, looking at this, I see this, and I just think whoever did this had the right idea, but, like, very poor initiation. Like, broken card, right? Like, this card is insane, probably shouldn't have been printed. The other cards, however, are also insane, probably shouldn't have been printed. You pissed on a fire pretty much with this hit. So you can go on like with your tangents, like whatever you want to talk about, but I think this is like very, very dumb.
Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure at this point, all of these things we've said about different, ban lists and our philosophies on how we think this game should be balanced or whatever. I'm sure I've said what I'm about to say at least once, but it all kind of blends together at this point. I'm not a big fan of taking cards like this and putting them to 1 when so this card going from 3 to 1 just means your deck is less consistent, but still has identical functionality, where if your opponent draws their 1 copy of Wanted, which, it resolves identically to if there were 3 in their deck. It just means that sometimes, and they can just, decks that were playing 3 Wanted, 1 Diabell Star can now just play 1 Wanted, 3 Diabell Star. And it's extremely similar, right? It's like, it doesn't do much. It lowers the power level so insignificantly. And then in the case of this specifically, I think it limits the power level. It doesn't limit the power level adequately of how people are currently using Wanted. What the dominant strategy of Wanted is right now is these decks are playing Original Sinful Spoil in their Snake Eyes decks, and that is it. Diabell Star is just another way to access the Snake Eye cards. Diabell Star can search like 7 things, and a lot of them are pretty cool. They're just not currently as strong as the Sinful Spoils cards. As Original Sinful Spoil. Yeah, they can search any Sinful Spoil card, but currently they're not as strong as the Original Sinful Spoil. There's Dramatic Chase, which can get to Diabell Star, which gets something else. There's the Trap card that you basically like tribute Diabell Star to negate anything. There's a quick play spell that's really cool. That's like Forbidden Lance and Raigeki in 1 card. Like, I'm sure a bunch of people don't even know these cards exist that are listening to this. And by limiting Wanted specifically, I don't think you actually curb the power level of the Snake Eyes decks that much. And what you do pretty much invalidate is every other application of Diabell Star, which I think are kind of cool and are underexplored, because as long as Original Sinful Spoil and, the whole Snake Eyes engine is at its full power, there is no reason to use Diabell Star for anything else. So I'm personally hoping that if they eventually, ban Snake Eye Ash or ban Flameburge or ban Original Sinful Spoil or ban something, they will put Wanted back to 3. I doubt they will do that. That's something that I don't think we've really seen the OCG lists do. We've seen TCG lists do that. Like, we actually just saw them put Kashtira Unicorn back to 3 when they banned Arise Heart, because they were like, But yeah, that's my take on Wanted. Is I think Wanted and Diabell Star do a lot of really interesting and cool things that we've just not had a chance to explore, because currently they are weaker than the best thing you could be doing with it. And this eliminates all those other avenues.
Yeah, I think also kind of what I think Ryan was trying to say, and I don't know if it got quite across, is that by putting this card to 2, you can do the thing that is broken about your deck a little bit less, but your deck still does the broken thing no matter what. And I think that's the thing when it comes to hits like this. It's not solving a problem. It's just making it. It's not even like, so you go from, if you're playing 3 and 1, even in TCG, some people are playing 3 Wanted, 3 Diabell Star. So you have 6 copies. Going from 6 to 4 is like opening up a card 40% of the time or something like that.
It's like, if Snake Eyes is still the best deck, putting this to 1 does not make Snake Eyes not the best deck. Right? Like that, like this is not,
Yes.
and spoiler also, the rest of the hits do not make Snake Eyes not the best deck. I guess I'll say. Like, if this is, notwithstanding new cards coming out, that could be better somehow, like the changes in this do not do that much to Snake Eyes. And like putting this card from 3 to 1 is not impactful enough, in my opinion.
All right. How many of you played One Witch? Between like Jeff's, 2 events, Ryan's 2 events. How many of you guys played One Witch?
I did.
I
for
played,
at least one
I
of
played
mine.
One Witch.
Yeah.
I
for
played
at least one of mine.
all
I played
my
One
events.
Witch.
I played
All right,
One
cool.
Witch.
That is basically what Konami did. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yes.
So now my deck now would probably be, well, I mean, if it was exactly this list, my deck would just be 3 Witch now probably, because
Yeah, and 1 Wanted, and you go, like, and
Yeah.
you're just like, all right, great. Yeah.
Uh,
So, we've seen these kind of hits before where they've just taken like 1 card from a deck and like put it from 3 to 1, and like,
And I do think that like Wanted is actually like the fact that like Wanted is like search Diabell Star, which is like a decent card, yes,
Mhm.
like Cyber Dragon like effect, and then also
Yeah.
lets you draw a card afterwards. Crazy. That's like engage.
Yeah,
But
this
the
card
thing
is
that makes
strong.
that
Like,
part
I don't think anybody's
that
saying this card's
crazy
not strong.
is original. The fact that it's like, oh, now you have like original, which lets you draw a card off the Wanted, also sets up like 5 other cards. And if you didn't want to draw a card, you can save it for next turn to search your deck for any card you want functionally for what you're playing and draw a card after that. So I think looking at this and saying, oh yeah, Wanted is the card that's problematic is like very, very bizarre. I would not look at any of the cards in the deck and think, yeah, this is the one that's the most problematic.
Yeah. Which, like, I guess what I'll say is, when Agov was about to come out, and we were just, like testing Agov cards, and we were pretty sure we were gonna play the Rescue Ace deck or something, like at the next event, but we were just, like messing around with all the cards. I made like 5 decks that played Wanted and Diabell Star and didn't play Original Sinful Spoil because of the different things that Diabell Star can search. And like, in a world where Original Sinful Spoils is not a card, like it is banned or never got printed, and just we're playing, and Wanted and Diabell Star are printed, and your opponent is using Diabell Star to like set a trap, and then like they use the trap, and then Diabell Star floats back and like sets a Wanted, and like the Wanted adds back the Diabell Star from grave, and then like puts the trap back in their deck, and like they're discarding a card every turn to like set imperm, like impermanence. I don't think anybody is like pounding the table that Wanted is broken. I think they're like, this is a kind of efficient mid-range engine. This isn't like FTKing me with Snake Eye Ash, but I don't know. I definitely know there's some personal bias for me on this one, just because I think this card is cool and there are cool applications for it, and I just truly like. I just don't think this solves the problem they're trying to solve, as Jeff put it. Is like, if the
Right.
problem is the Snake Eyes cards, hitting Wanted to 1 is not the answer. Like, I don't know. It's so weird. It's such a weird.
It still
so
does not
weird.
make them not a problem. They're still a
Yeah.
problem, right? Yeah.
Ugh.
So
It's so
but
weird.
next we have there can be only one limited. We also have that.
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Like, I've talked this one to death, so I'm gonna skip it. If you want my thoughts on this, watch the last one. Watch the previous ban list one.
That this card went to 1, and then a card that is popular in basically every OCG deck was either anti-spell or summon limit, and that card you don't see anywhere. Neither of those cards you
Nope.
see on here, but it's in basically every other deck. So I'm very surprised. I thought they were going to be like, oh, we'll semi-limit these to 2. But we see another card on here. We'll
Yeah.
get to that in the semi-limited list. That is similar to these cards, but I'm very surprised that this card got hit before the other ones. But
Yeah.
either way,
That is the end
we
of the
have
limits.
semi-limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it
Just
for
those
limited, no
three.
forbidden cards. Semi-limited, we have Ib World Chalice Justicar from limited to semi-limited. That
Sure. That
card should
doesn't.
just be at 3.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I guess. Yeah. Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. SP Little Knight from 3 to 2 copies.
Baffling.
I
This is the one I wanted
uh
the patch notes. If anything, I don't need the patch notes of SP Little Knight is a strong card, so semi-limited. I need to know how 2 was the number they decided on. I just.
yeah. Even 1 would kind of make sense simply
Because
because,
some
some decks
people say
can play
2.
2.
Yeah.
And also because there's another card on the semi-limited list that could affect that. We're gonna jump ahead real quick. Is
Yeah.
Pot of Extravagance to 2. So I thought maybe, maybe a lot of people were playing Pot of Extravagance with 3 Little Knights. Nope, I went and looked at the Extrav list online today,
Mhm.
and almost all of them still only played 2 Little Knights. So
It's funny that was our first instinct. That immediately all I could think was extra, and then maybe something to do with Castura Unicorn. I was trying to make sense of this as much as humanly possible, and I just couldn't. Makes zero sense at all.
Yeah, I don't know. It is
Oh my
really like
god.
it is baff. This I think like this is like when they limited Nightmare Unicorn or Nightmare Goblin God 6 years ago at this point. I still feel this is kind of like limiting Zeus like without and then randomly because like they limited Zeus irrelevantly like the second Zeus is not the issue. They limited Zeus irrelevantly, and then because they irrelevantly limited Zeus, it actually made their Kashtira format way worse because Diablosis could just rip Zeus, which it couldn't do in TCG because everyone just said, "Oh, I'll just play 2 or 3,"
right.
And I think that's so funny that it's like their irrelevant, incorrect decision like made a format like terrible, like compared to our version of it, which is like very funny. And then they just destroyed Kashtira, a month later, so it didn't actually matter, I guess, that much. But they kind of had to because I don't know. I don't know. This one is baffling. I think from like,
Yeah.
and I can't even say anything about like this is just nonsensical, truly.
Yeah.
Well, we always have this discussion of where like semi-limited cards tend to always be incorrect, right? Like
Yeah.
from a design and a gameplay perspective, semi-limiting cards makes no sense until you get into cards like Reborn Tengu, Destiny Hero Malicious,
Malicious.
stuff like that, right? Like those are cards where I think putting them to 2 is completely fine, right? Like I think there's an issue that they still exist. However, they are significantly worse when they're not chaining into the third copy, and
Yeah.
the potential for drawing 2 is so not high, but there is a chance that you are drawing bad cards now. But yeah, like just looking at a lot of these semi limits, before we even get to them, it literally makes me say, who did this? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
what is the point? Like, this is just like, yeah, we did something. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, slap on the wrist. Like,
that's what it feels like. Truly, and that's truly all it is when you look at some of. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna say they're not exactly the same, but it was sort of like when they limited Fibrax here, and it's like, yeah, a couple decks would like sometimes play 2 Fibrax for the grind, whatever that even means in a format where Fibrax is legal. But like, come on. And the one where they limited shooting Riser Dragon, do you remember that? That was when everybody was like, "What is? Did you guys like make a typo? Was that supposed to be banned?"
I don't remember who we asked. I think we talked to someone. I talked to someone who was on R&D in some capacity when that happened, and like I just said, "Hey, like what?" And then I think the conversation was like, "There's a combo that plays 2." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
I don't know.
And we spent like 4 hours looking through like OCG videos of like, when is this guy summoning 2 shooting Rise of Dragon? It's like, yeah, they make 1 in combo and then Fibrax tags out into another. or something. I'm just like, I don't know what you're
That
talking. I don't know
yeah,
what's going on.
I
Like,
I don't know.
it was so ridiculous. 'Cause like, I think they honestly believe a lot of these hits do something, and they try and find justification, and it's just not there.
I don't know
Like,
when you would need. I've never seen. So I will
I
say
don't
I
know.
have seen decks play 2 Little Knight. I have played 2 Little Knight. I've never seen a deck play 3. And again, if Little Knight went to 1, a bunch of people would be like, that doesn't matter. And I would be like, actually, it does. Like, there are decks, many decks play 2 because it is such a great and versatile card. I think SP Little Knight probably should be limited. Like, I think that card is like, there's no reason to like having 2 of them in your deck is so easy to make. It's so generic. Like, it just solves so many problems. Like, I think it probably, if it got limited, I'd be like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, this card is super generic. You get to use it one time. It gets to solve one
Yes.
problem. It doesn't get to solve every problem. You know?
Yeah, you don't get to make it like as a layer on top, right? Like that was the whole concept was you would just make it in a lot of these decks while comboing out,
Mhm.
and then you would have IP to make a second one on your opponent's turn as a form of interaction.
And then a third one on your own
Like,
turn,
on top of-
like everyone,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you would have SP to beat Nib, and then
Mhm.
you would have the second SP to banish a card and also blink out a card.
Yeah.
And like that's fine. Like that this is a card that can go to 1, and I would not be completely upset that it went to 1, because then it removes another layer to how some of these decks can function. So I agree with that. I don't know if I want to get into the realm of like, well, at this point, why should SP Little Knight exist? Because I
Yeah.
do think it's actually like quite well designed, and I think it's balanced like relative to how powerful some of these Link monsters are. Right? Like if we look at Little Knight, I think this is like the makings of a very good Yu-Gi-Oh card. Like this is a good
yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh card,
I'm
but
glad
I'm
you
not
can't
upset
attack.
when my
Like, I'm
opponent
glad you
plays it.
cannot
Yes.
attack directly
No,
when
I
you
think
use
that
it.
is
I think
the
that's a
biggest
very
one
good
It is
decision.
possible, right?
it is very relevant.
Yeah.
I think that
you
one is the
cannot-
most relevant.
Yeah.
Like, that
You
one's
cannot make it
insane,
and then
yeah.
attack for game, like, most of the time.
Mhm.
Technically, you can make it and then
I
like
think-
kill them by battle damage over monsters, but that's very infrequent.
So I think the other thing that I think really balanced SP for me and doesn't put it into ban territory, one is the attack stats.
Oh yeah, it's super
two-
low, yeah.
Yeah. And 2 has to be I guess there is some like depth in terms of like gameplay with SP where like it does have to banish both cards. So decision making for some of the interactions for the non-on summon effect do become kind of relevant. And I think like cards like that are good because like they they reward good decision making and like forethought and like playback, right? They're not particularly oppressive. Like they can be like SP can actually just end your turn, sometimes banishing a card and then banishing another card temporarily. But in the grand scheme of things, you can offset that. You target a guy, I chain Kieran. You do something, I chain Econ. Like, oh, you've wasted your SP, or like I've held a card to make your SP, redundant.
Mm.
But and then like I think those are always nice. Like there is nothing particularly oppressive about SP, but I would argue and agree with Ryan that the second SP is probably where you get into like this territory of okay, maybe it shouldn't be a 2. There is a world where this will become an issue in the future, and it has been an issue in the past. So maybe 1 is the correct number forever.
Yeah, 2
and we
makes
just
no
have it
sense.
until we have the time. Yeah, two is like yeah, all right, man. Yes, I summoned
And
the
if
third
it's
SP
at
in
1
the
in
grind
TCG,
game.
you can use Unicorn and rip it, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're unicorn. Yeah, yep, and that's relevant. That's very relevant. Yeah, which like
That honestly,
Ugh.
I think you could definitely argue. We might get into like Master Duel levels of like, so the Master Duel Duelist Cup is currently happening, and the
Mhm.
hot deck out of the Japanese metagame is the Snake Eye deck playing 3 copies of Unicorn and like Birth, and some of them have gone as far to play like 1 copy of Theosis, 1 copy of Fenrir, like a copy of the Field Spell, a copy of Rise Heart. It gets really, really ignorant. So I don't want to go too deep on that, but like just Unicorn itself being summoned, and then you trying to play normally and your opponent hand trapping you does rip crucial one of extra deck cards.
Yeah.
And that is another layer of gameplay and another layer of deck building that can come into play in the future. And I think that's when you really have to differentiate 1 copy on the like like a limited copy versus a semi-limited copy of an extra deck card. As we discussed with like the Diablosis stuff, I think that is good depth. That's deck building and gameplay relevant, and that adds a layer to Yu-Gi-Oh that is not particularly oppressive and does reward certain, forethought, deck building, whatever, and interaction. And maybe that is a problem when we get into cards like Diablosis, where it's like, yeah, this can just happen without you doing anything. Like your one-of extra deck card is now gone.
Yeah,
But like with the unicorn one, there is a deck building conundrum and all the other stuff going with it. So
for sure.
something to think about. If Konami R&D USA is listening, think about that. Write that down. We'll have it for lunch. Yeah.
All right. Semi-limited. Also, Fire King High Avatar Kieran. Jeff and I played 2 in our deck on purpose. So did Jesse at some point, right?
Same thing.
Like,
Yes.
yeah. We played 2 on purpose. I don't know. I don't. This doesn't really change.
Do you think that this was just like, okay, Snake Eye is doing well in Japan, like Fire King was doing well in Japan,
Mhm.
and then I know with us discussing this, like I linked a YouTube video from one of the Japanese YouTubers, and he posted a video saying, okay, if the Snake Eye stuff gets banned, and he was assuming that this ban list would be the one that completely ruins every Snake Eye card possible.
Yeah.
And he posted a pure Fire King deck with the new Fire King promo.
Mhm.
Like I think Kieran and Garunix are very, very good cards. I think paired, they are just ridiculous. I think Kieran is incredible. I do not think this is a card that will have any difference at 2 versus 3, just because of how this deck is like. It's all sort of renewable, right? Like you are able to just.
No, it's the same thing with like the wanted simple spoils. The access to the cards that are around it is like make it being limited to 2, like basically
pretty much, right?
consequential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
This
now
is
they're
like
just like
a
making
really
it, you can't hard draw
fringe.
this, right?
Like, well,
Like you're
so
losing points of interaction going second. It's like, okay.
I feel like in the pure like control Fire King deck that we have seen people play already because of the new Fire King card, like that deck has been getting popular in some OCG lists. Like we've seen it, popping up on Twitter, and that deck plays 3 High Avatar Kieran, and I think in fringe cases for that deck, where they over the course of, like on their turn they pop Kieran in their deck, on your turn they pop Kieran in their deck, on their turn they pop Kieran in their deck a third time and then kill you. And sure, in that deck there are fringe cases, which granted most of the time they'll kill you anyway, right? They'll pop Arvada instead of Kieran one of those times,
If you have to go through
I
the
do
first
want to
copy
point
of
out
Kieran,
one thing about that is that where you go like, oh, you pop in deck and then you pop in deck and pop in deck. Being limited to 2 in that instance most of the time does not matter because of the fact that Garunix also lets you
and
pop
pop
from
from your
your
field.
field.
Yeah. And then as long as Arvada brings it back,
You send Arvada, bring it back, and then you
Yeah.
just pop it from your field, and then special summon back, and then pop a thing anyway.
Yeah,
So
like it's very fringe where you don't have access to that, and like it
that's
might
why
matter.
like the decks that right now only play like we've been playing 2 Kieran forever, and that's just what you do. Like on the once the second Kieran floats back to the field, you just pop it from the field if you need to, and then it's fine, and you don't have all these extra bricks or whatever. But yeah, like this OCG deck is more like control with Kaiser Coliseum not being able to let you play.
Yes. And like,
well, that's required because like you are just
yes, you're dumbing down your deck.
You're playing into Snake Eye, right? Like you have to just make your deck a way to beat Snake Eye. But I think like when we do look at OCG, there is some fatigue in terms of like how the format has progressed, right? It's not particularly fun. It's Tenpai. It's Snake Eye. Like what else are you
Voiceless,
gonna do? Yeah, voiceless. Yeah, it's like I think Burnout for OCG is probably more relevant than Burnout for TCG. OCG doesn't have real events. Like, why wouldn't you play a fun deck at some of these CSs or otherwise? Like, if you're sweating
like these big local tournaments that you have that are like 80 people, I'll go play a deck that is not all. 100%.
Also, Japanese like formats leading into their WCQ or equivalent, like Japanese nationals in like either district or otherwise, they're not particularly fun or engaging. Like they double a limb into like a single limb top cut. It just becomes kind of weird. So the tournament structure is not fun either. So like I could definitely see people just like they would rather play a fun deck and they have to make their fun deck more oppressive, which is kind of what we see in TCG. But yeah, like maybe when they have another list that actually hits something, we'll see some more innovation coming out of OCG that maybe we can adapt to. So that would be cool.
Snake
So
Eye
the next
Ash
card,
semi-limited.
Snake Eye Ash
Don't wanna talk
semi-limited.
about
I think we've said all everything we've said about
It's
the other ones applies to this. It's just like
yes, your Snake Eye Ash
extremely
now you still
fringe
with 6
case.
copies it was
Yeah.
over 50%. Now it's still 50% with 2 copies. This is stupid.
You probably put another Poplar in your deck just to have a slightly
if you
weaker
really
starter.
if you really wanted to, yeah. Like
And it's
you,
like
you're listen with Poplar, and then you just replace the wanteds with more witches, and your
and
deck is
then
functionally
very
similar.
fringe case where the game somehow goes long enough where your Snake Eye Ash searches all the other Snake Eye Ashes. Now it searches one fewer sometimes. and maybe if you open with them and you summon one from your deck, you cannot cross out theirs. Maybe. That's about it, I think. Other than that, most games will play out identically. So, from unlimited to semi-limited, Kaiser Coliseum. This card has been forbidden in the TCG for almost a decade now, I believe. Mm-hmm. It was 2015 or 2016 or something. Like, it's been 9 years-ish that this card has been banned. This is not a card I have thought about once in in literally 9 years.
I think it's so crazy that it just started popping up in OCG recently.
Yeah, I mean, like same kind of thing. I mean, with like other floodgates, but
either though. That's the funny thing, because we definitely pre-Mystic Mine, there was a good chunk of like Sky Striker decks that were actually like doing this as well. So that like they had pockets where Kaiser Coliseum was functional the same way that we had it functional in 2014. Like it was just another like oppressive like protect the castle sort of control deck strategy.
Kaiser Coliseum with my Noble Knight Artorigus and 5 and 4 equip spells.
Yes.
Pretty much, right? But when you look at it now, it's like okay, like they had all the information for the last 10 years, like we identified before, and they still felt the need to put it from 3 to 2.
To 2, yeah.
Like I don't know how both. So I think TCG R&D, obviously they do have to answer to Japan, but like this is something I think they did very correct 10 years ago.
They just put it to 0 instantly.
Yeah. But like, does that mean they also have been fighting to keep it at 0? Like, is this something Japan is like, this is fine, we can unban this? And they're probably like, nah.
Does Japan send a champion to duel every ban list to see if Kaiser Coliseum? Yes, if Yamato sees his shadow, Kaiser Coliseum stays banned for another 2 ban lists. Like what? Like I don't know. Like, I'm not sure.
Dude, like how do you see this card fall in and out of formats? And it is like, I think this card is probably, do we want to say it's on par with something like obviously it's a floodgate, right? But I would like to think it's on par with something like Anti-Spell. Where
I want to point out right now in this specific format that the card is like actually really good going second into the fighter decks, because it means that once you summon monsters, they cannot activate the Princess Engraved, they cannot activate Garunix, because now they have 2 monsters on the field, you have 1. They can't try to put more monsters on the field. So when you activate Kaiser Coliseum going second, all their graveyard effects or any sort of things that summon from hand, they can't activate anymore, and you're allowed to display.
Okay, sure. So that is actually, that's way more relevant than I gave it credit for.
Right. I think a lot of people, because you don't think about Kaiser Coliseum anymore. You don't think of
no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I haven't thought about this card in literally a decade.
It is like,
so people listening probably didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
I definitely didn't think
it was banned in Master Duel, honestly.
Yeah.
No, I had it in my deck this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like, this was, I don't know if I just made this up, but we were talking about the passionate. I feel like this is something that must have happened. My memory is too specific of this for it to be something I made up just now.
Is this like the Wind Link monster again?
No, no. This is like, I definitely read this on a Yu-Gi-Oh blog post in 10 years ago, and just like every however long my memories cycle through random things, where like Kaiser Coliseum was not banned explicitly because of its power level. It was banned because it was an old, confusing card that caused a lot of judge calls.
Ruling disputes.
A ton of them. Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, do you remember reading that?
That is true. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I know that that
Yeah.
is for a fact. I was going to
Yeah.
mention it earlier, but I thought we
Yeah.
were going to
I'm
move on. But
pretty
yes,
sure it was on a blog
Coliseum
post.
causes a lot of ruling disputes and like, how does this work? Like, if I do this, can you do that? And there was a lot of judge calls back in the day where they were like, we are sick of
Involving
this.
kaijus too, right? It was involving, or were kaijus even out
Right,
yet?
yeah.
Or they like just
Uh,
came out? I don't remember. Or Lava Golem maybe? There was a
no,
bunch of
yeah,
weird
but it was
ones.
also like, if can I give my opponents monsters? Like,
Yeah.
if Kaiser Coliseum is up,
Yeah,
or
like can I
like, is it
lava
only
golem
they
my
cannot
opponent
play, or
if like
like,
Kaiser Coliseum and eventually they were like, who cares? Banned. You know,
yeah.
like
No,
who
no, 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 no.
cares?
You know what, Ryan? I remember this very vividly, and
Yeah.
I don't remember who.
I think it was a blog
I'm pretty
post.
sure. I'm no. So it might not have been it might have been themed with a blog post, but I'm pretty sure the first worlds that I went to, when they do the little like you can talk to the judges and like R&D and
Maybe.
stuff like that, I think it did get brought up where we asked Jerome or someone about like
Battle of the
Kaiser
Elements.
Coliseum.
No, we
Yeah.
asked him about Battle of the
No,
Elements.
no, that was
I don't remember. Was that
2018.
different? Okay.
2016 was the Swords of Concealing Light one, where I
Sure.
bring that up and Jerome's just like this way, and then Japan's like, no, it works this way, and then Jerome's like, no, it doesn't. And then they changed how it worked in Japan, and then Japan's just like, actually, let's change it back to how we had it originally. And Jerome's just like, oh, I guess so. Cool. Yeah, so like that stuff tends to happen quite often. It's like instead of it being this back and forth battle between regions on how this card is meant to work, with precedent obviously from Jerome's end, they just decided to ban it for TCG because I think maybe deterministically they cannot figure out how this card should work, right?
Well, now
That
Japan will
seems
deal with it
way more
12% less
reasonable.
frequently.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Well, wait, what's the equivalent? Like the normal spell that can only be used during the standby phase or something. Like all of
Yeah.
those cards from the Dark Ages that are just written, and you look at them and say, "How is this meant to work?" And then you ask someone, and they go, "I don't know."
And they go,
Like,
"Who cares? Is it in your deck?
Yeah,
Is it in
yeah,
your
so
is it
you
in your
playing this?
hand?
No.
Yeah, yeah, literally. Is it in your hand right now in your standby phase? No, that doesn't matter how it works, does it?
Yep.
Like, yeah. Pot of Extravagance from unlimited to semi-limited. I think we have a lot. I mean, like, I guess we're gonna put all the pot of cards kind of like. I feel like Pot of Prosperity is way stronger than this card. I understand that Prosperity is limited in Japan, which is why decks started playing Extravagance, because the decks that were playing Prosperity, if they could support Extravagance, are now playing Extravagance. So now they just also hit Extravagance. And it's just like, I feel like Pot of Extravagance is so much weaker than Pot of Prosperity, but it is a like perfectly fine card to exist. I do not think Pot of Extravagance needs to be hit at all. I can understand an argument for I feel like if Prosperity got hit, I'd, here, like it has been there, I'd be like, sure, that makes sense, is fine, whatever. I agree, sort of. Like, it's whatever. If Desires, well, we just got Desires back at 3. I'm pretty sure they just put Desires from 2 to 1. Like, Desires went from 2 to 1 there and went from 2 to 3 here. Like, it's very weird that we would diverge on that. But, if Desires went back to 2, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Like, that's fine. Extravagance is the one that, like, I'm kind of scratching my head on. And I feel like, isn't Master Duel, don't they have, like, Duality at 1 or something? Like,
Something.
they're getting...
all of the pots are at 1 in Master Duel, yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Like, I guess, right? Like, might as well.
Yeah.
I don't know at this point. At this point, it was just a mistake to make any of them, probably. Like, when you really get down to it, me saying I think Pot of Extravagance is the fairest of Desires, Extravagance, and Prosperity doesn't really mean that much when it still falls into those, like, why is Pot of Greed banned? Because quite literally every single deck in the game would play 3 of it, and, like, that's not deck building. That's just, that card begins the duel in your deck. Like every time you build a deck. Okay, let's try to balance it. Let's make Pot of Desires. There's a cost to it. Oh, every single deck that can pay that cost just does. Oh, so now it's not really, like, we're in the same position, just the subset of decks that automatically include it is slightly smaller. Okay, let's make Pot of Extravagance, which also does the same thing with a slightly different, smaller subset of decks that can support it. But every deck that can support it will play 3 of it because it is Pot of Greed, etc. Right? Where it's just like, Pot of Extravagance probably has the smallest subset of decks that can play it compared to the other ones. But I guess at the end of the day, it is still Pot of Greed. And now I've talked myself into thinking that this card also should probably not be at 3, but I don't think putting it to 2 is... Why? I don't know. Why do they like putting cards at 2? I don't get it.
Japan has been like that since the beginning of time. They
I know.
love the semi-limited list.
I don't know. It's a semi-limited list.
To them, it's
scares
like,
and
hey,
upsets
look
me.
it, we did something.
Yeah.
That's like how like.
I
Like,
hate this.
please do
I
something.
hate the semi-limited list. Anyways, all right. Do either of you have comments on? But you were talking about this earlier.
No,
before we started
please.
recording.
Let's move on.
No, let's move on. Okay.
Well, just quickly, I do, like I said, I do think Extrav and Desires are quite well designed in terms of like they're doing something unique. They do, prey on deck building, and Desires especially can cause you to adapt how you play a certain game, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem being when every deck tends to be a bunch of 3-ofs, all engine, and the other ones are non-engine that aren't required to be in your hand, a card like Pot of Desires becomes kind of broken, right? When there's not one of engine requirements, like decks that can accommodate Pot of Desires will play 3 copies of Pot of Greed, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when it becomes kind of egregious. Extra, similar vein, tends to trend towards evil. Duality, again,
that's
similar
fair.
vein in cards.
That's fair. It does,
yeah,
doesn't
like
it?
they,
It just
it
trends into
towards
floodgate
evil,
decks.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I like those cards when we don't get to the point of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we're at now, where, the pot cards just become absolutely absurd as like consistency fixes for the rogue decks. When the rogue decks is still, I don't think anyone's arguing, like Flunderies is a very powerful deck. Yeah?
Yes.
Like, we agree with that?
Yes.
When you put 9 pots into Flunderies...
Okay. I would disagree. I don't think it's the Flunder cards that are like extremely powerful. I think it's the cards that support the Flunder cards that are extremely powerful.
So I'm inclined to agree with that. However, again, we go back to let's compare, Yu-Gi-Oh! 10 years ago to Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, looking at Flunderies, these are all self-replacing, continuously floating with in-engine outs to certain cards. I think these are very, very well-designed cards, right?
Yeah,
Before we even get into...
I agree the Flunder cards themselves have, like, you get really powerful things by sacrificing a really powerful thing, right? And that's, like, cool. I like... It's basically just like Monarchs, the modern Monarchs. Like, Monarchs was like, oh, you can't use an extra deck, but also, like, your opponent can't either, right?
Yeah.
And your deck is built to support that, and theirs is not. So, like, here we are.
Yeah. Well, Monarch maybe was a little bit more egregious because, like, that was in-engine, like, built in, right? That was, Monarch was literally all engine for the most part, whereas Flunderies, the oppressive cards are non-engine functionally. So it becomes very, very weird until you get into, like, obviously your Barrier Statue and all of the other stuff. Like, those are essentially in-engine because they are searchable. But when we get into stuff like Featherstorm, Shifter, and everything else, yeah,
all
like,
the homies hate Featherstorm. Can that card get banned too? All right, as an aside. Anyway, continue.
But yes. So it's to me, it is more just like, I think putting these to one, it does eliminate the process of these are the decks that are doing this. They are good things. We are making them too consistent. That's when, like, putting these cards to one does sort of lead to the argument of why do they exist at all. But then again, when we get to formats where we don't have decks like Flunderies, like we look back as to when, Desires was first released or something, even just like, pockets after the fact, you would activate Desires to draw 2 and have more cards for playback, more cards, more options. And some decks like BA, Metal Foes, all these decks that, again, are playing a bunch of 3-ofs, minimal, like, 1-of engine requirements and stuff like that. Even like Metal Foes is able to take the 1-ofs out of their deck and then play Pot of Desires. Worst case is if your hand sucks, you are playing Pot of Desires. Like, that's when there's some depth to it, right? Like, when your hand sucks and you play Desires and you're banishing a bunch of cards, like, that's when I think Desires is, like, at its best. Not when, like, you're doing your combo, you're playing Desires at the end. Like, that's why, like, more fair decks that aren't, doing something oppressive at the end or, like, layering, I think Desires is, like, functionally fine. So, like, BA was probably the extent of Desires for me. Maybe Zodiac, maybe the Trickstar deck, right? Maybe Engage with Desires is, like, where we get into weird territory. I don't want to go too deep into it. But I think, for now, with how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, limiting these pots and or banning them is completely appropriate. Because I think in engine, these decks are already strong enough. They do not need more consistency cards like this to function.
And Anyway, to the unlimited cards.
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
Cool.
Summon
We have the
sorceress with
Errata Summon
errata.
Sorceress, which Ryan really likes. I think this card
I don't like it because I
could have been made.
don't think it's good. I like the philosophy behind how they edited its effect.
It's a tribal card now. It just doesn't like.
Yes.
I think there will be a point where this card is actually like, bad for the game again, and I hope it doesn't get to that
Possibly.
point. But in Konami, there'll be an oversight.
Yeah.
Like what like functionally, I can't off the top of my head see too many combos where like this card is going. I'm gonna look at it and be like, I wish this card was banned.
I
again.
think
Not
this
in
card
Konami,
is
right?
I got hand trapped to oblivion. I'm gonna Hail Mary, hope it lets me play a little bit more in a deck that like it'll be a card that like so the old Summon Sork the old Summon Sork was such a fascinating card in that every sentence you kept reading, it just had more effects, and you weren't sure when it was going to stop, and it kind of just didn't. Like, we never had this card and Fiber legal at the same time. If you look at the decks in Japan from the era where those two cards were legal at the same time, they are hilarious. They would make Fiber, they would summon O-Lion from their deck, nothing that we haven't seen in the TCG. They could then use O-Lion and Fiber, I believe. This was like before Auroradon even came out.
What just goes you into
like,
Summon Sorcerers, and then you get a token.
Yeah, and then Summon
Sorcerer
targets the token, and it gets a machine. It gets B Buster Drake. Then if you had like one more guy, you could like make a firewall and link a guy that firewall was pointing to. B would search to A, and then it would summon A. Then you would just like firewall loop the A and B, and then eventually you would just get unlimited link materials and then have an ABC Dragon Buster at the end of it. From nothing. From like just Fiber. From like normal summon Jet Synchron. It just did that. And it's like, that's not okay. Like, did anybody read any of these cards before they got printed? Whatever. And then
also, can we talk about all the cards we just talked about? There was Summon Sorceress. We talked about Fiber and Firewall Dragon.
Yes.
It's like some of the craziest cards ever printed.
And they were all at the same time. All at the same time. Yes. And then it's like, okay, great. So what else did Summon Sorceress do? Oh, also, if you like kind of bricked and could just like cobble together a couple monsters with like Reproducus, Call Dinosaur, make a guy, it could summon a guy from your hand and then like full combo them just off of that. But now they took away every aspect of it except for the summon a guy from the hand and then summon a monster, and then you're now locked into your type that you summoned. You can't just do a full board after that. It is, as Bohdan said, I feel like it'll be for a tribal that like a deck that is locked into one type, and it will not be, I feel like, probably not part of like some crazy combos. There is a merit to putting a card on your opponent's field. Notably,
that's the one thing I'm trying to figure out when that can become
when I want to target their card with Spiral Tough. Hello?
Potentially.
And then I'm locked into
you
Warriors.
You want to shut off Kashtira cards? You want to shut off Imperm?
Or watch this. This is what you do. You IP into this, and then give your opponent something really bad.
Give your opponent Gimmick Puppet. Oh my god! No! Why did you just put that in the world?
And then give them Gimmick Puppet.
Oh no, Jeff, I hate this card again. Oh no, why would you say that?
What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean?
Oh, it's affection negated. Okay, never mind. All right.
That's why I was confused.
Oh god. Okay.
That doesn't work.
Okay,
good. You summon from your deck had its effects negated. Not the monster you summon.
But both are negated, which is great, which is perfect.
All right, good. Okay, actually.
Yeah.
Humongous W. Okay. Oh god.
So part of me again is thinking like there could be avenues that you could take with certain decks that are summoning Princess, right? Because the restriction, you were only locked into that type for that turn, right?
For the rest of the turn, yeah.
For the rest of the time. So maybe there is a Fire-esque deck post-ban that could potentially take some value from Summon Sork, giving your opponent a card. Like maybe there's a way Fire King can give your opponent a card that you want to pop with Princess, and then you get additional value because you are giving them an extra body, and you're maybe cheating out another Fire King card.
could add some layers, could do something. I'm not sure like where we go with this, but that like off the top of my head, that's where I'm thinking like there can be some applications there, right? There can be some very niche things where you are just like giving your opponent a card that has a trigger that we can, proc by popping with something. And like those are easy to set up in like modern Yu-Gi-Oh. The question is like whether or not it'll be good or even oppressive, right? Like so only time will really tell. And we've seen a lot of like other cards either be errated or come off the list entirely that we previously thought were completely ridiculous. Even before we get into like if Summon Sword came out with its old text, I think that would be ridiculous. Like that would just not be okay. There would be people screaming, pitchforks everywhere. Konami offices would not be safe. But with the current errata, I think it is on par with like these cards that are maybe like too far gone for their time, like Ib the World Chalice, stuff like that. And like people will do crazy stuff with this card. It will maybe not be good. It probably just won't be relevant at all.
Well, I think the only use for this card is to still do something crazy. It's just
yeah. No.
Like this card has no other purpose in my mind with the way that it's worded and the effects that it does.
No, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I can't fathom like any way where this is like going to be a fair card moving forward unless they build and lean deep into it to function that way, right? Like
I'm kind of just over erratas, and they should just print new cards, a new summon sorceress that was not broken.
If they made like Summon Disciple and it was just like Summon Sork with like the googly eyes and a funny mustache, and then it was this. Yeah. I kind of you've mentioned that before that you just don't like erratas and like they could just print new cards and like yeah, you're right. And I don't even think Summon Sork is like a card that's like iconic. If anything, right. she instills fear. Of just like, oh, I remember when I hated this card. Like that is true. But I don't know. There must be like, I don't know. It was a Shonen Jump promo. Maybe that means anything. Not sure.
Maybe. I mean, it's a Magician Girl card.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Pretty much.
The other unlimits, I guess, is rather quickly. Gears through the Orcus Mechanite. Sure, great. I don't think that matters at all.
All the rest of these cards, except for Change of Heart, I think we have at 3 already.
Yeah, Supreme King Dragon Darkworm. I don't know why. I did not even know this card was not at 3 in Japan. I knew at one point it was at 1. I did not know it was still that way. Rite of Aramesia. Aramesir. I still don't know how you're supposed to. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to. I don't know how you pronounce this card. I've seen it so many different ways. I'm just gonna say.
I just say Rite of Aramesir.
Arameser. Okay, fair enough. Regardless, Griffin is banned.
Was at 3, but apparently we have it at 1.
Yeah,
I thought it was 3.
No, Inferni Archfiend went to 3. Inferni Launcher is not at 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Inferni Launcher to 3 could do some damage, said somebody who played Yu-Gi-Oh! Over a decade ago. Not anybody who's played Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently.
And all I can think is like,
so
there has to be something
like
ridiculous.
Someone tries to play Infernity into these 15 hand trap.
It's just not
gonna
have
a bad time.
Your launcher's gonna get belled.
Exist,
You're gonna cry.
Right. Yeah, Bestial Bell, like.
You can't even have Cross Out and Cold Buy as they are quick play spells that are required.
Oh yeah, they have to be in your hand. Oh yeah, and you also can't play hand like
3 Prohibition.
You like can't play hand traps in Infernity either because you can't have no cards in your hand. You can play Imperm, I guess.
You could play Imperm.
But yeah, so Rite going to 3 is hilarious to me because Griffin Rider's just been banned in Japan for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And also this card is unplayable while SP Little Knight exists.
Ooh, they're doing what you love to do, Ryan, which is just not summon Griffin and Token at all and use it to make a link.
Yeah, I know. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. That is also not good when SP when SP exists, Rite is just so bad. If they just have an SP on their field and you activate Rite, your only option is first action, attack it with the token. If you do anything else, SP banish itself, banish your token. And then your token does not come back. and then now all of your cards do nothing and you like can't use a normal summon effect. So your deck just like, yeah. And like, sure, in some instances, it being able to contest SP by battle is relevant. But right now, in the current format where if you're playing against Snake Eyes and they have an SP and you go Rite attack and they go okay. You're not. They're just gonna kill you next turn because they have,
Great, you're
probably
dead.
like,
Use your battle phase.
yeah,
You are now dead.
yeah. All right. Yeah, literally. So I don't know. It just, this card is so weak when SP exists. I feel that this is, whatever. Oh yeah, change of heart to 3. Sure. I mean, I think we already have mind control at 3 and change of heart at 1 and tactics at 3. Like, what's 2 more? Like, at this point,
Yeah.
I don't even know. There was definitely a point not too long ago where
And
I just kind of hoped all these cards were not legal at all, and then now we've just gone in the
Yeah, I'm,
total
like,
other
not
direction.
the biggest fan of them. I
Yeah.
really don't like the takey cards, but
Mhm.
I have I have more of a problem with cards like tactics, which
Yeah.
are multifunctional and create toxic environments, where compared to like change of heart. And
We have
mind
Snatch
control.
Steal at 1
Or-
also. Who cares about change of heart? We also have Snatch. We have so many cards that just take your opponent's
But
cards.
I also just think that there's another card that is better than all of them, except for maybe tactics, and that's enemy controller.
Yes, that card. We also have 3 enemy controller. You're right. That card is super nice. So, is change of heart still at 1 here? It is, right?
It is at 1, yes.
In Master Duel, it's at 2 maybe or something crazy. Bohdan?
Sorry? Which
change of heart in Master
It
Duel?
is
How
a
many?
2 in Master Duel, yeah.
It's at 2 in Master Duel. Okay, great. That is maybe what I said. I'm not really sure.
Yes.
I don't remember at this point. It's only been about 8 seconds. I don't remember what I said. All right, yeah. So that is the extent of the OCG list. So as far as cards that changing actually mean anything, I guess the most impactful, in air quotes, change is Wanted being limited. And even then,
Yeah.
that's like not much.
Your turn will now not replace the card you discard for Diabell Star.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes the
Yes.
hand trap will affect you more because you have less ways to play through one hand trap, I guess. But when you don't, you still do the same exact thing as normal.
Yeah.
So
I'm inclined to agree.
yeah, looking at the rest of these, I don't think anything else really changes. I think that just like now your deck is slightly, and I actually mean slightly less consistent, and maybe your 10 pie dragon deck kills you more often, and your voiceless deck stops you from playing with hand traps and negates more often.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm hoping that if we get a list somewhat soon, it'll not be like this. I guess is all I can say.
I don't think it'll be like this, but I think it'll be very slap on the wrist. I think it, because I mean, if you look at other people, what can they do? Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing they can do outside of like I think the correct long-term thing is to ban original Sinful Spoils, but I
Yeah.
don't think
Mhm.
that's what they'll do. I think it'll be like, if we want to talk about it, like just briefly, real quick, I think that for sure Snake Eye Ash goes to 1, and I think that is the only direct hit to the Snake Eye card's Diabell Star engine. And I think there might be many things around it. Like, I think an easy card that could go, we talked about this before, is Atlantis Band.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
card has thousands of game played online and has a 68% win ratio when summoned. That means when you summon that card, you win more than you do when you summon Access Code Talker. And this card existing only creates more problems. We've said it when that card first got announced, that this card only is going to be used for evil, 100%.
Yeah, this is not the
And
evil that
this
we
card-
thought it would be used for, to be fair. Like, we thought it would be
No, we
used
did
for, like,
not.
going first FTK evil, not just, like, put all your monsters in attack mode, die.
Pop it, and then summon 2 more guys. And
Yeah. Yeah, like I didn't realize how relevant it would be of just, like, I actually think it's crazy how relevant it is, like, in the Snake Eye mirrors, where, like, your opponent has 4 level 1 monster in defense mode. You just go, those are all in attack mode now, and have no attack, and now you die.
Something else is that against the ritual deck, the voiceless voice deck, it can be like sometimes kind of hard to navigate their turn without being able to target things. And if you ever get to Zelantis, it turns off all their cards and makes sure that they can't float with the graveyard effects by putting them face down and putting certain things in attack mode. And then you can like summon back Princess from Grave, popping a face down ritual monster, which won't trigger the spell in the graveyard, and then you can kill your opponent. If Zelantis gets
Can
banned,
the ritual monsters
it
be
is-
summoned back? If they were ritual summoned, they could be summoned back, right? From Zelantis, I think,
y-
right? Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
If
didn't
they
know
were
what you were saying.
summoned,
But
if
yeah,
they
they're
were
ritual
summoned off
they don't
of,
just
It
get
also
banished, they vanish.
depends on wording as well.
Yeah, no.
Some of the cards just, like won't let you, right?
I'm saying if they were summoned off of like the Saravis guy, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if they
yeah.
like
If
it
it's
wouldn't
someone
come
from
back
Old
from
Man,
They were not
Zelantis.
properly ritual
The
summoned.
cards
Yeah.
that were special summoned and weren't properly ritual summoned, yeah,
Yeah.
similar to the cards that get cheated out from the extra deck, yeah.
Interesting. That's another application. Yeah, I don't think that's a pretty unexplored application of that card. I feel of like if your opponent somehow as a monster can't be summoned back, it just is gone forever. Such as an adventure token or something. Ugh. Anyways, yeah.
Because like if you were to banish the birds, right? They would get banished by their own effect and then not return to the field from Zelantis.
They also they also can't be special summoned at all, anyways, right? I think isn't that
Right.
what they
Yeah,
say?
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yes,
Or,
so for
yes.
like 17 reasons, yes, a
Yes,
Rabina is
yeah.
gone. Rabina
Rabina
is
is gone, yes.
Rabina is banished. Like that card's not going back. Yeah.
So I think like it'd be like Snake Eye Ash. I think Zelantis could go, and that's like a huge deal for a lot of decks because before it was like the thing. That's a reason. Right? Before, like if you can't do anything to your opponent, like you can clear their field, but they kill you next turn. They just Zelantis you and summon a crap ton of guys, and you're
Yeah.
dead. If Zelantis goes, that makes like the mirror like more manageable, and other decks too. Like if Voiceless doesn't kill you, then it's fine. You can clear their field, summon a guy who's a negate, set a card, and pass, and then like your opponent can't just throw 20 guys at you and Zelantis kill you. The other card I think we talked about before, Link Kribo. This card has what is this card used for really? Like it's I think getting rid of Link Kribo makes it so the Snake Eye turn plays a little bit differently. Also, it means you can no longer summon Heat Soul, which is like pretty big deal.
Oh
Getting an
yeah, it
extra
also
card.
it makes Heat Soul way harder to summon like in general, which is like honestly probably
Yes.
fine. You have to be playing an actual Cybers deck most of the time to make it
Right.
You know, or you have some weird like Almirage line, I guess, and like even
Almirage,
then that's
and then
very different.
But it
yeah.
has to be two different types. It would have
Yeah.
to be like Almirage
right.
and then like Masquerade.
Well, yeah, I mean like in not counting like the Sunlight Wolf in this deck specifically, just like in other random decks, like where they're just trying to put
there
Heat
are
Soul on the
like
field.
yes, and other Cyber stacks would be able to do it because there's other Cyber stacks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's other
Link
Cybers
monsters with
cards.
different
yeah,
right. So it just makes it this specifically like it cuts you
Yeah.
off from the draw and floating into it for another draw later.
Mhm.
So I think that those three cards in particular would be like really good hits to take the deck down. And I mean, I don't think Snake Eye Astral One is like a really good hit. It goes from
Yeah.
6 copies to 4 copies, but I think that's the only thing that's possible.
Yeah, something in the comments from our
at this
last
point.
one was a suggestion of, just like us card they could ban to stop the decks in their current form, maybe not eliminate the viability of the decks entirely, was to hit Flameburge instead of hitting Original Sinful Spoil. And I think that's...
Like ban it?
Yeah, I guess.
I just don't think any of these cards are getting banned, but I think
Sure, that's fair.
possibly they
Yeah.
could be like I would think it would be weird if like the main deck boss monster gets
Yeah.
banned, but
There could be a world
Yeah,
if they think the pure Snake Eyes deck or the decks as they exist
yes,
currently...
a lot of what other people thought they could just limit
Yeah.
that to 1 as well.
Limiting
Like Snake Eye
Flameburge,
Ash to 1 and
yeah.
Flameburge to 1.
Yeah, which is funny that I don't think like that wasn't thinking limit Flameburge to 1 as like a viable option is not something that I had considered. And like maybe like there are a lot of decks that play 2 and they use 2. Like they summon 1 and they put 1 in their spawn trap card zone. Like there are 2 on the field at the same
Right.
time. You know, like that is
right. It makes it like to play you have
Yeah.
to play around Nibiru like the best way that way sometimes.
Mhm.
But I think as far as fire cards go, I think that might be it. I think other cards like I think there should also be like little slaps on the wrist to other decks. It just so like we talked before, like Labyrinth Coup Clock, I think should be banned. If it's
Yeah.
not banned, I think like Ariana would go to 1. It's another consistency hit, like Snake Eye Ash, um, Albion Sanctifier Dragon. Please just get that card
Yes,
the hell
please ban that
away.
card,
Because like,
actually.
um,
Yeah, I agree.
Hot Red Dragon, King Calamity, banned in OCG. I think it should just be gone. Baron de Fleur, same. It's the card that every deck is all lately. Baron de Fleur something makes you can't use Nibiru. It's like it they got their money out of it. It's $1 now. Whatever. Crossout Designator, as long as this card exists, anytime there's a format where there's a lot of mirrors, this card is just extremely toxic and makes it so hand traps are irrelevant. And if it's not if you don't use it against a hand trap, it's Solemn Judgment on your opponent's turn. I have hated this card since it got printed, and now that it's actually seeing play, like if you've played competitive Yu-Gi-Oh at all and are trying to play meta decks, you know how frustrating this card is to play against.
Yeah, I think something about Called By that I hated like for a while was that there were some formats where if you didn't hand trap them and they set Called By, it was just broken. And like Crossout is in a mirror, that plus better, plus more easily activatable of like, yeah, like if they do not hand trap you, like if they don't hand trap, like if you don't hand trap them and they set Called By and they negate your grave effect and banish it and you can't use it for the rest of the turn, you're just like, well, I guess I lose. And like similarly, Crossout, it's like, oh, I guess I just die. Like here we are.
Right, it would be like in the Orcus deck. Like you combo set that, you Orcus, get rid of your opponent's Orcus card, and now they can't do anything.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you cannot use Heart Power for the whole turn. Have fun. You're like, oh, pass. You know, like, okay, here we are. Yeah.
And then
yeah, I can definitely see all those things being reasonable.
I think the last 2 cards I think like I feel like might actually get limited would be like Anti-Spell and Summon Limit. We just see them so much, especially Summon Limit.
I would throw a party. I would if Summon Limit and Anti-Spell get hit, oh man, I'll be screaming from the rooftops. I hate those cards so much. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean we've gotten basically all the other traps except for Skill Drain limited, and
which Skill Drain was limited for a while, and like you know maybe he's out on parole right now, but something could happen, and he could.
I did lose the Skill Drain at locals the other day, so my opponent just summoned 3 Horus monsters and flipped Skill Drain, and I did not have it out in my hand and got killed. So
yep, attack for game.
Yeah. But yeah, I think at least Summon Limit, I feel pretty confident. I'm going to say I feel pretty confident. I'm going to be really sad when it doesn't happen. But I feel pretty confident this card will go to 1. Anti-Spell on defense. They seem to love this card for some reason.
Yeah, I hate that card so much. I hate that card more than anything, maybe. That might be my most... Anti-Spell Fragrance might be my current most hated legal Yu-Gi-Oh card, actually. Like, I God. That card has inflicted so much trauma onto me over the last decade. And longer. Like that card.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Other than that, those are the cards that I feel more confident than not confident. We will see on our
Sure on
list.
the next list. Yeah.
Yeah. Cards, I think there was one card that like if it wasn't getting reprinted in Rarity Collection, I would also feel pretty confident it was Appaloosa's time to go.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Is if Appaloosa was not getting reprinted in Rarity Collection in the alt art, like confirmed, then I would probably say it could be Appaloosa's time.
Because similar to Baron, Appaloosa now is like again used as you can't hand trap me now. I'm free to do whatever
it's just on my 5th summon all Appaloosa, now you have to have a second hand trap to go along with your nib, and you're just like, you know, like okay, like yep, I guess. I don't know. It is. I agree. Like Appaloosa has slightly more cards that work against it than other types of those cards. Like you can like ogre it in response, and like but realistically, when is the last time we've seen Ghost Ogre? That card has been pretty underplayed. Because it has to be good against other things too. It can't just be good. It can't just be good against Appaloosa.
Well, So,
yeah.
funnily enough, Ghost Ogre has actually been picking up play. Santoli side decked it in his voiceless deck, and the argument is it does have pretty significant overlap, while also being functionally like close enough to the last hand traps you are adding to your Snake Eye strategy, right? Like it is good enough into the shitty decks while also being good enough into the best deck, like marginally good enough. So yeah, that is something that has picked up a little bit of steam in like the online communities for sure. That's something to consider.
I got Ghost Ogre at the YCS in Vegas.
Mhm.
I killed my opponent that turn.
I was about to ask, did it do anything to you?
If Ogre,
no, it did not.
if Ogre doesn't like pair, obviously it's just horseshit. But then sometimes it pairs. Sometimes like you now have a card that functions against voiceless that wouldn't normally function. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the problem with all of the less like all of the less desirable hand traps. The problem with them is if they're your only hand trap, they do literally nothing, and that's like that's the issue is when you draw like one Ghost Mourner and your opponent normal summons Snake Eye Ash, and you're like,
okay.
This will do very little. Like, this one singular Ghost Mourner will do very little, but we'll see. Like, we'll see how this plays out. Usually with you losing, but it could happen.
I would also like one other card I thought is if they do like a little taps to everything, I think also maybe another little tap to Pearly, like they're limiting the draw 1/1 Sleepy Memory or something like that.
Is that card at 2
I
right
just
now?
think Pearly's
I think
it's
right.
a 2, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's just kind of like a toxic deck, kind of. It's weird to say with everything that goes on, but I just think giant towers like cards that also draw multiple cards and also get rid of all your opponent's cards.
How do you feel about Shifter and or hitting Kashtira again in some capacity? Or is
that was another
just
thing I was thinking? How do they tap that deck too? I don't think so. Here's the thing: Shifter, I think, will go to semi-limited. I feel pretty. It's another card I feel pretty confident about.
Yeah.
As far as the Kashtira cards, pretty sure none of them will get hit because also those are in the rare new collection again.
Oh yeah, they are. I also don't actually think the Kashtira deck is like that. I actually think the design of the Kashtira deck when a Rise Heart is not legal is like perfect
it's
for
weird to
the
say
power level we
but
want.
it is like
of like modern Yu-Gi-Oh. It's like how the Kashtira deck functions when it doesn't just have like a Giga Floodgate in its extra deck, like a Rise Heart was a crazy card. Not only just the Macrocosmos effect, like the attaching cards from Bandit, like it just did. That card is crazy. Like that card is
mandatory,
like,
not once per turn effects are crazy and should never exist. That is absurd that they ever printed a mandatory, not once per turn effect.
Yeah,
card.
it is
I can't
actually
believe that ever got anything.
That is crazy. Yes, and like without a Rise Heart, I think like the power level and like the functionality of the Kashtira deck, like as it functions now, is what a modern Yu-Gi-Oh deck, like it is like the natural progression of those types of Cyber Dragon-esque monsters, and I think that's fine. And when you add Dimension Shifter into the gadgets, it's literally just modern gadgets and like. Yeah, like, and haha, when gadgets were really good, what did they do? They made Shockmaster. Like, what does that have in common with a Rise Heart? Yeah, but I feel like hitting the actual Kashtira engine is probably not necessary. Because again, I also think that deck, like, it only has seen more playability right now because it happens to match up sort of well against the fire cards. Like it has options that are like pretty, like Unicorn is very good when it kind of rips apart their extra deck and it's like, oh, my hand would lose to SP here, I'll get rid of their SP. Or like, oh, I actually have an answer for SP, I can get rid of the princess, and now their grind game is way worse and I can actually win with my weird gadget monsters. Like it's just matches up pretty well against that. But if we just shift to a different deck being good, like maybe it won't be as good. If it doesn't have access to 3 shifter, maybe it's not as good. Same with Flunder. Like if Flunder doesn't have access to 3 shifter, it's probably not as good. If it doesn't have access to Featherstorm, it's probably not as good. And it's one of those things where like
another card on top of that, I think that pairs. I think also would be like we see like Prosperity go to 2.
Sure, fair enough.
which also
Yeah.
which also like a slap on these other decks' wrists, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be playing those cards as well.
I could see that, and then also sort of hit voiceless. Haha, I get like just saying
I
prosperity
would
to
not be
2
playing
hits
that card in
voiceless. It's
voiceless,
like
but
yeah, it's like
I
a
would not
deck
be
that
playing that in
can play
voiceless.
prosperity, and prosperity got semi-limited. I guess that deck got hit. Like no, like not really. This is like when they semi-limited E-Tally to like hit Cosmo, and it's like oh okay, like I guess sure, I guess that's fair. Trying to look at
I think that's
Vanadium.
basically.
I guess that's the last thing I want to say is like, is that deck even? I will be perfectly honest with you. I've played
But
many
again,
events.
Vanadium, if they hit it, it just like hit a Baron, right?
I have played many events since that deck has come out. I have not played against it one time. Nope. Wait.
I play
nope.
against
I have
it a
not.
lot
Yeah.
at my locals, like different
I've played against
locals
it 0
around
times.
here.
So
Except right now, actually, all my locals are filled with branded players and voiceless players. Actually, I played in like a 30-person tournament, and I think like 15 of them were like voiceless players. It was kind of crazy.
Oh, that is crazy. At Vegas, I played against 5 voiceless. So
Yeah, you did play against 5 voiceless.
It's 5 voiceless in 10 rounds, and I've played against Vanadium 0 times in like 50 rounds. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Like that deck came out in.
But it's way cheaper than the fire deck, so it's probably why.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it as far as these other. I'm just looking at this list of decks real quick to see if there's anything else that I think Rescue Ace is in a good spot right now. It's like fine. Centurion is not a good deck, but Calamity is dumb. That card shouldn't exist. It's whatever. Tier is probably in a fine spot at this point.
Yeah, Tier's weird, especially like what's it called? Like cards are playable right now. I can't remember. It's getting late. I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
DD Crows with legs.
The Bestials. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's I'm just like the difference being like all of these decks that were doing well pre Phantom Knight, are just
Free Fire,
kind of got pushed out, and Voiceless too. Like Voiceless kind of pushed a bunch of them out also, which I think is something that most people like aren't really like mentioning is that Voiceless is doing quite well. You know, like compared to like any of the like Voiceless has a higher percentage than pretty much any of these like when you look at Fire King and Snake Eyes and then Voiceless still has up a higher percentage than almost all of the other decks did pre.
And Voiceless just gets better in the next set.
Yes,
like,
it gets more support in the next set. Yeah.
2 cards, 1 realistically, but that 1 card they get makes the deck so much better.
Yeah.
So
if we don't see
that gets better and the 10 pie deck gets better, I think
it gets existence. Yeah. Yes, the 10 pie
yes,
that gets to exist.
Yes, it gets to exist, not better. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe when Voices gets better and 10 pie gets to exist, maybe slaps on the wrist or all the Snake Eyes decks needs, right? Maybe.
I think the slap on the wrist to like the main deck and then like going harder on the extra deck.
Sure,
cards
that's reasonable. And we've seen that recently, right? We saw a Rise Hark at, we saw them semi-limit Unicorn and then rip the Kashtira extra deck apart, like limit a Rise Heart, ban Diablosis, and then it's like, then eventually they just banned Rise Heart. But yeah, we have seen that. We have recently seen them just kind of dismantle the extra deck and then leave the main deck kind of intact. Because realistically, the strongest cards are from your extra deck.
Right, yeah, it's the cards you have access to whenever you want, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, I think that covers everything. Yeah, thank you all for listening. This was our OCG ban list video. I don't even think I feel like when the TCG list comes out, the video might not even be this long.
If they put SP to 2, all of our thoughts are already there. So,
yeah, that's true.
We'll link this video. You can listen it back.
Yeah,
we'll just repost the video again.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, thank you all for listening, and see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.